People do this as well. I'm just going to read these two comments briefly. I want to get to the Trump stuff. I'm, you know, eager to do that. But in the video I posted about the the AI video, ChatGTP and Gemini say my YouTube channel is effed and that YouTube sucks. And I spelled sucks wrong. Let's go back and fix that. Very good advice from AI and not to be ignored. Shorts are fantastic for getting your stuff out there. It's not about making money, but getting seen by new viewers. Just think of it as free advertising. And not true about short attention spans. It's not true about short attention spans. People want to see more, but need to give them a quick teaser first. It's just the way things work out now. Um, you know, People try to be helpful. And I have another comment like this, and that's fine. But that's why I tell people not to. Once in a while, people say something that has value, and this has no value because I did shorts on both channels for I don't know, like 3 months. It was a pain in the ass, and it made zero money and brought in no people, new people, and and I said how many people have come to here by a short video, and no one could answer because there's nobody. There's nobody in my channel. Maybe one or two people have found my channel through a short video. But, you know, people think they know more than I do and don't realize that I actually tried this thing out. I had lots of short videos. I was making 4 or 5 a day for, or whatever it was, like, through my other videos. And, even back when I was doing Britney videos and I was doing, you know, uh, the stuff with the it's a dude videos, the Michelle Obama, like where I am now as a creator is there's such a leap between Hollywood bullshit stuff or Illuminati videos and the stuff now. I mean, me hammering Trump, but it's really more about the spiritual stuff and all these things. The spiritual stuff is off-putting to Christians, and there's just no way to get around that. There's some Christians who are more spiritual in nature. Like there's some Christians, there's some people in every religion that jump to being more spiritual, and that's like really where I mean, as you do your job and you get better at it, you tolerate less bullshit. You don't want to do the go back and do the remedial shit, right? You just I mean, when you do a job for a long time, and the more you hone your skills, and the better you get at it, and the longer you've done it too, because it's repetition, and some of it's going to be mundane and whatever it is. It's harder and harder to go back and do, like when you're an eager young employee. There's this show, and for the life of me I can't remember the show, and I always remember this scene, and I can't even picture the actors in this scene, but I think it's a young white guy, and he's coming in fresh out of college, like a go getter, and I'm not a go getter too. That's the other thing to know, like that kind of thing. When I get into something, I can really get into something, but there's people who just get obsessive, and I don't. But this young go getter comes in, and he's trying to perfect what's going on with work and streamline it, which of course everything should be like that, but people aren't like that. And there's, I think, an old black guy that says to him, this is a running out the clock situation. It's like a great moment, where he's saying, like, you think you're going to, revolutionize what we're doing here, but no one gives a fuck. And we're just running out the clock. And you will too after you work here a while. And so that's the case for everybody. And so, you don't want to do a lot of these things, all the things that the AI suggested, but a lot of the shit that AI suggested, I know isn't going to do anything. Because the problem I have is my audience isn't identifiable. And because they're not even identifiable to themselves. Everybody who does Sajmarg meditation has a niche. When I had, when I was a preceptor, a couple drug addicts that came to me. And they weren't so much drug addicts as they were, people who are just lost. without purpose, which I was. Like I didn't, there didn't seem to be a reason for my existence. There's a couple of ants crawling around my comforter, really tiny. I got to deal with that shit in a second. um, I think they might came off the dogs. Hopefully, I don't know why they'd have ants on it, but anyways, that couple of go-getters, what I say, slackers. You know, I was always an underachiever, slacker type person, and kind of lost looking for my purpose. And I didn't think it was spirituality or meditation, so I had to be convinced. And there are a lot of people out there like that have the potential to do this. And you know, there's more people like that than there are people who are, oh, I really am a spiritual seeker. People who are reading spiritual books, and there's people who dabble and stuff, but are looking for something. They're looking for a reason, looking for purpose, because the mainstream system isn't giving them that purpose. And sometimes they're truthers, and sometimes they're not. They're going to tend towards being truthers because they're not. They don't believe in the official story of the official system, right? Like I'm not really, built like some of the other truthers that is anti-government, anti-establishment. Like mostly, I don't give a fuck about any of these things. But I do know the system's fucked because it never worked for me. When it doesn't work for you, you see through it, and you don't get it. Like I never got the American system. Like I looked around and, I participated in things. I went out and got drunk and went to parties and did shit that other college kids were doing. But some part of me was like, there's got to be more than this. Getting a job and living a suburban life, buying a house and get married. There's got to be something more. And I didn't know what it was and didn't have a clue about it, and never would have looked at India or meditation or, guru things and all this stuff, right? And so, you know, that's not a definable, AI isn't going to find those people. Like you can't find them because, when I was doing Saj Marg, I could never predict who would stay. New people would come in, and that there's some people I liked more than others, and there was whatever it was, right? If I could choose the people that did Saj Marg and liked it like me, I probably wouldn't have chose many of the people that were kind of lifers, because it's something that happens internally, but their personalities were quite different. Like, it's a personalities often clashed, and, so, people are really seeking the spiritual aspect of this thing. And then if you look into what people call black pilled, that's also a specific group of people who are, willing to accept that there's no chance or hope. And most people can't go there. Most people can't do that. And so, that's where I'm at with all these things. Like in terms of the people who will be an audience, it's not defined by any criteria that you could be some keyword search. The people that it's also just their, the nature of somebody's heart that is not, like I didn't pay much attention to my heart until I started meditating, my etheric heart. I wasn't a person that really thought about love, and, like I naturally was loving, but not in a way that I was like, thought about it. It was there inside of me, but I didn't know. No one would have said, oh, he has a good heart. No one would have said that. That, in fact, they probably would have said the opposite because I was kind of an asshole, my 20s or whatever it is. But in Saj Marg, the idea is that people with a soft heart are often have to put some protective layers on. They push people away. They have some boundaries because they feel pain on a different level than people who are, people with hard hearts are often can be really superficially nice, but they're not, deep down they have a hard heart. And so the example was given of a coconut that has, a hard shell, or an almond that has a hard shell and then a soft internal part to it, right? The almond has a shell around it. Coconut has ultimately the coconut milk and the soft coconut inside, but a very hard shell. Whereas a mango has a very soft pulp on the outside, but a very hard shell. And so that's really hard to understand, and what kind of personality develops because of that. And can that hard shell be penetrated enough so the person can feel the transmission and do the spirituality stuff. So, you know, there's no way to define my audience, and YouTube is not looking for that. They want superficial fucking dumb people. People really want dumb people, dumb fucks. This is what Trump's found his niche. And dumb fuck can be not necessarily IQ stupid, but oblivious in some way, and people who are not deep. Like Trump wants people who aren't going to look into themselves. And I mean, Trumpers are the opposite of these liberals, like the feminist liberals, these people who are so much in the outside world and are political. Like people who are really political never do well with Saj Marga, the meditation and spirituality in general, because they're looking for external, whatever it is. They're looking to externalize their existence. And so I have to go through lots of people to get somebody who is like, will get what I do here. Which resonates, like a quality person, like what I would think is a quality person who deserves whatever is presented here. The deeper level stuff. People who are, aspiring for something better and willing to change. And it's just, such a rarity. And so there's, probably 10 million Americans that would qualify to do that, would have what it takes. But also, they have to get by my personality, which is off-putting. I'm not, friendly. I'm not inviting. I'm not reaching out. I'm not, like somebody said I should do live videos. And then somebody else wrote, I think I have that exchange here. And so let me take a look here. Let me take a look-see. Paul, I say this as a friend. This is different. The ads drive me away from content every time. Admittedly, I have extreme end of this ad revenue. For example, there's videos started with an ad, then just 2 minutes in another. I would be willing to get rid of the ads, but I have to make enough money, and I have to shut it off for each video. I have to remember to do that, which I want to try. But that's not, that's YouTube fucking me over at other people. It's not me. I don't want that many ads, and I don't want the video content. I mean, I would like to have no ads at all. I'm not like, if I had enough money where this wasn't an issue, where there's enough, members. I mean, like, you have to pay for free content. Like, you got to pay for ad-free content. Like, if everyone was a member, I could go off the ad program, and just do, and even then, YouTube runs ads, and go do something else, right? So, I mean, it's, that's nothing to do with me. Here's this other one. I'm just trying to find if I might not have saved those things. But here's this other one. That's not it. Here it is. Here, I gotta make it bigger. Actually, you showed up in my feed without watching you for a long time. This happened a lot when I talk shit to the, I complain to the AI, whatever it is, the chat bot, which was way less, I don't even want to call it AI because it's not. Whatever it is that when you can get it, we can chat with this, whatever it is, right? For YouTube. Remember, and then all these old people started coming back. But I chatted recently, and now they won't let me do it anymore. And so, actually, you showed up in my feed without watching you for a long time. I just don't agree with most of what you say anymore, and don't have enough time to listen anymore. Sorry, that's what's really going on, Paul. When people speak for everything and everybody. Sorry, Paul, that's what's really going on. Like, I'm just giving you some tough love. You think you are the most observant and perceptive person, and you're just not. I don't care. These things don't hurt my feelings because I'm not somebody who is a fan of my own stuff. Like I get why people don't want to watch, and I understand if you're a Trump or somebody else. But I'm not going to pander to you, and whatever I think if I'm the most observant or not, like I'm right all the fucking time, right? And I'm certainly right about Trump. Like Trump is not going to do anything close to what you think he's going to do. And so when you say you don't agree with most of my stuff anymore, I'm right about all of it, right? I'm certainly right about Saj Mark and the spiritual aspect because I've experienced the benefits. Like I have the knowledge to know, the experience, the knowledge to know. That's a weird thing. I have the experience of the success of the Saj Mark system, where it's transformed me and it's changed me in a way which I know it isn't available because no one ever talks about something like this. Is there anybody else out there says there's a system out there that enhances your ability to love? Because the cleaning aspect and the transmission don't exist in other, spiritual. I mean, there is Raja Yoga, which, in some ways you could get a little bit of this, but it is never centered on the transformation of a person like it is in Saj Mark. There's nothing out there, at least that I know about. They all say the same philosophy, but in terms of a system, the method of Saj Mark, which is cleaning and transmission, and a consciousness that doesn't exist in other different practices. There's lots of philosophy that talks about divinity within, in some of these Eastern cultures, some of the yogic things are similar, but there's nothing like it in terms of how it works practically in your life. And people go and try other things, and they're like, well, this sounds the same. It sounds the same because, the knowledge is there because somebody reached a high level of something or other in spiritual or some level of spirituality. It's in every religion if you really look for it, some of the teachings. But the teachings don't get you there. You don't read a book and become a spiritual person. You have to go on a spiritual journey. And Saj Mark is the best that's ever been for people to do that in terms of a method. And then all the stuff with Trump and any insights I have to any of those things, I've been right over and over again because I see it, like I fucking see it, right? So, that is not what people want to hear. They want to hear how great Trump is. They want to have hopium or whatever else there is out there. But people don't want to. Most people just don't have it in them to be spiritual. They're just not ready to do that. And they're still, and they're still trapped by the material system. They're still trapped by materiality, and so they they can like what they hear, but they can't do it practically. And so, like I said, it's a small number of people. But why are you still watching? And so I guess I didn't take that one quote, but there was a quote there was a comment that somebody posted where the person said, and again, these people are like trying to be helpful, but they just don't know. Like they don't understand me and how I work and where I am in my, my effort level in terms of all this other bullshit stuff that I need to do that I'm not good at. Right? I'm not good at to start off with, and I don't really feel like doing it. Like I've just, I feel like I should be. Like I've put enough effort into all those things, and even if I did put the effort in, there's no definable audience, and YouTube doesn't have a demographic for even the people who, that I mean on a just most remedial level, to identify a group that would want to watch my videos. Those people are being prejudiced against too. We always are, because we're a minority that the majority of people don't really want to hear from because they just want to do their fucking bullshit that they're doing. And they don't, it's the kind of people that wreck something that you think is great. Like you talk to somebody and you think this thing's great, you're really into it, and they tell you all the ways that it's not great. And you're like, you just wrecked that thing for me. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Don't wreck something else. Like I just, I need this stuff to get through, and I don't want it wrecked for me, right? So, it's the kind of people that you either you listen to them and you see that they're right, but you're pissed that you ever listened to them, or you just shut them down because they're talking about something you don't want to hear, and that group of people is always prejudiced against because they're undermining people's ability to go out and live their lives in a shitty system. And so anybody that's really exposing the system for what it is going to be depressing to be around. And it's going to strip away your hopium and these other things, right? So those groups aren't identifiable. But in all that, somebody wrote a comment saying that, that I should do these live chat videos. And I said the reason I don't do them is, like right now I'm in a meditative state. I'm not even like conscious of what it's like I drop into the zone and I just, and just information flows. And I'm not even like thinking it. It's not like I'm using my analytical properties. But if I'm talking to somebody, then I have their consciousness and I have to be, drawn out of myself and be more social, even to people who I'm closer with, never mind complete strangers, which I have to be, more alert when I'm with strangers, right? Because strangers are unknown, and so you have to be wary, so you have to, instead of being, in a place where you're just, dealing with your own thing, now you have other people's thoughts you're hearing, you're reading their, their expressions and their micro expressions, you're engaged in a conversation with somebody, and they have their own, you speak directly to them, right? So I'm not speaking directly to anybody here. I mean, the comment thing a little bit, but not really. I'm speaking to a way of looking at life. When I'm describing people in the comment section, I'm talking about a way of looking at life, right? People comment and have a way of looking at life, and you have these people who, I don't want to call them trolls, like concerned trolls is kind of a way you could describe them. But they might really want to they really want to give their input to my situation, and they have very little insight into it. Because if I did comment or videos where I'm reading people's comments, a live video, and people are donating money, and I have to thank them and like, look, oh, there's a donation here and all that shit, then you wouldn't get good content from me, because I would have to be in a social situation, which is really hard for me and really draining, and I can't drop down into, so people think, why don't you do this? Well, there's a reason, like, because fucking I would suck at it. Right? If I had all these comments coming in and I was doing something live, and I'm aware that people are listening to me in a live situation because their comments are fucking popping up all over the place, and I'm looking at their comments and losing my train of thought, then I'm pulled from the depths of my, spiritual meditative type of, place that I go when I'm just me and the microphone, my dogs, and I'm able to just drop in. And then, as opposed to this, whatever that would be, right? And so, yeah, that would make more money, and people like live stuff, and people want to be called out, and they want me to say their names, and they want me to, praise them and whatever. But that's not what I do here. Like, that's not, anything that's just, not who I am and not authentic to who I am is bad. I can't do that shit. It would kill me. It would wreck me, like in a. I just can't do it. Like, I can't do things that I'm not, comfortable doing, and it's not who I am as a person. And, even though, yeah, it'd be great if I was that person, but I'm not. Like, that's my content, like, it's a trade-off. My social issues are a trade-off for good content, right? My inability to socialize with people, my inability to do networking is a trade-off for me being really introverted and dyslexic and these other things that allow for me to penetrate into deeper understanding of things and be able to focus on things in a different way than other people. But, I lack the business sense. If I was better at business and I was better at all these things, I'd have a more successful channel, but my content wouldn't be as good, right? Anything that I would consider superficial, and I appreciate people can do it because I can't. Like, I'm not shitting on those. I understand, for when you have a lack of ability to do something, you can appreciate people who do it so easily. And so I appreciate those things, especially when somebody else does it for me or helps me with it, who's good at it, because I'm not. And so, an AI will never understand that. And so these are the issues. But anyways, let's get into the Trump stuff. Greetings, brothers and sisters. I really want to jump off into this Trump stuff with Israel. Just great stuff. coming here. Um, One of my viewers sent me this. I should have. They asked the AI about me, and it's well. Let's read here. Paul Romano is a YouTuber known for his channels Apocalypse Now and the Pox of the Future, where he shares content on various topics, including comedy and satire. His videos often blend humor with commentary on current events and societal issues. I don't really do much satire. When I thought about it, I guess you could call some of the things satirical, like the thing I did when I talk about Ray Romano being my brother or something like that. Maybe it's, I don't know, like whatever. I don't know how it's judged as satire. Preparedness and survival. Romano discusses topics like survival strategies and potential global catastrophe. Kinda, I do that. I mean, it's like a resume. It's like somebody writing a resume and polishing the stuff that I put out here. Spirituality and meditation. He also shares content related to meditation, gratefulness, and spiritual growth. Additionally, Paul Romano has ventured into writing with books like The Choice, part of the Art of the Remembrance trilogy series, which explores themes of reality and control. The Art of Remembrance series, I have the second book, never put it out, and then I'll never know if I write the third book, but there's that. His work extends to collaboration with other artists and creators, and he has a presence on platforms like Deathwish Inc. Romano has worked with his label, known for his association with hardcore punk music scene. So there's two other Paul Romanos of prominence out there. I've never met another Paul Romano. I've only met a few Romanos in my lifetime. There was a guy named Romano who ran a 5-star restaurant. I lived in the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas Virgin Islands, for about 4 months. It was a nightmare. I've talked about before. I mean, as much as something like that can be a nightmare. And this guy had a 5-star Italian restaurant. And, I was a waiter, but I ended up not working there. But I talked to the guy for a little bit. But his name was not Paul, but he was a Romano. But anyways, there's two other Romanos who are somewhat famous. One is a musician, and the other is an artist. And then that was it. But so it did this thing when I asked about Pox of the Future, and it searched the internet for Pox of the Future, and found some Dutch videos which were about, these were scientists. I think it was Danish, Dutch, I'm not sure. One of those, Eastern European countries. And there's a couple videos with Pox of the Future in it. Now, there's people who've used this term after I've claimed it, after I've made it into my Pox of the Future is different. But there were two videos with Pox of the Future, but the channel had a different name. And Gemini conflated those two things, and I clarified it, which was good because other people might search Pox of the Future sometime. So it's good when people do this and clarify it. But that's not me. This Deathwish Inc. I have nothing. I'm not a singer. I'm not a musician. It's not something I do. And I'm not. I mean, it's a totally different person. And that's part of the problem with AI because it talks so confidently. This is, when it gives you this list, it's defining things in people, and it can make huge mistakes because, it just can't differentiate between two different Paul Romanos, right? Which is, hopefully, I mean, I don't think this is the biggest problem with AI, but it's a real problem because, you have to, whenever you're getting an answer, realize that it's not an expert eye of these things. It's combing the internet for information, and it comes up with, a good, the way that it can present it is great. It's going to be worded correctly. I mean, it's mastered the English language. It really knows how to synthesize data and put it in understandable formats, but it's going to get things wrong, like it just will. And maybe this will be worked out at some point, but how to not differentiate between one Paul Romano and another? In how many, Jane Smiths are there, John Joneses or whatever it is, right? Like, so when it is, there's so many people out there with the same name, and then other things that blend together. So I've seen, two issues here that other people would know. Like, they would know. I mean, the Pox of the Future is talking about scientific stuff that this channel's talking about, that had Pox of the Future in the title of their video. And, it's you can't conflate two totally different things, right? And that's where guys get things wrong, in the algorithmic aspect of things and all the rest of this stuff. Okay, so this is going to be funny stuff today. It's gotten to where it's just funny. Breaking: Israeli media reports their air defense is costing Israel $285 million per day. And Matt Kennard, a checkmark, said, "Don't worry, Americans with no health care will pay." Kaboom! So that dude fucking brought it. So that's putting me in the right mood for what I'm about to do here. One of the reasons that I wouldn't be a politician is because I would have an inappropriate reaction to shit like what Trump's doing here. And certainly I'm not a Trump. I mean, this is, the stuff I've been saying about Trump for years, sometimes like thinking it's funny, sometimes thinking it's, I mean, in the beginning, it was so great that he was like this because he was making a mockery out of the political system in the show because he wasn't acting presidential, tweeting in the middle of the night. I love that stuff in the beginning and how much it pissed off the old school politicians because it's all fake, right? They're not. These are bad people that pretend to be, that act in a way, and they're not even good actors. Like they care, and they don't care. They maybe cared in the beginning, but then they get eaten away by the beast system, wears them down, and then they just turn into cynical, self-serving, selfish, dehumanized people, lack of humanity. And it's in the criticism of Trump that I've been talking about recently, and anybody who's had beef with Trump, his ex-wives, disgruntled employees, people over the years, is that the guy is like inhuman. He's like heartless. Well, it seemed like some part of him didn't want to go to war. Like some part of him actually understood that this was like in his first term. Even though he rolled out, he said he's totally willing to use nuclear weapons, and he said shit. He bragged a lot, but maybe some part of him felt like a little bit resistance to killing innocent people in ways other people didn't, even though he's so oblivious and so narcissistic and so selfish. But the reason that I wouldn't do any of these things is I don't take it seriously, and I would make jokes that would be totally inappropriate, like I do here. And I can do it here as a person like this, but not as a person who has any say in what's going on, right? Because people are suffering. And if you don't take that seriously, or at least understand that, the implications, you're not clueless to the social implications that Trump is, then you come off as like just inhuman, right? That you don't care about what's about to happen with these people in the war. And so here's a good example of what I'm talking about.
We are following breaking news. The White House has now issued a timeline for when President Trump will decide whether to take action against Iran. This is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just moments ago.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so this is what I know about Trump. And the Trumpers, they should know this as well. Because if you really like somebody, if you're really into something or somebody, if you really love him like they claim they do, then you get to know people that you love. And you know things about them. And the reason Trump is taking 2 weeks, again, he's saying he's going to make a decision. He said, this has come out in various ways. So his position is within the next 2 weeks, I'll make a decision one way or another. And what did I say yesterday? You're never going to want to take that off the table. You're never going to want to say we won't use the bunker buster bomb in the future. So it's not permanent. And so he's always given Israel what they want. And Iran is saying they're not going to grovel. And so Trump almost has to drop this thing. But it's not sure it'll work. And Trump is always going to back the side of a winner. I have something, even Morning Joe was, these remedial people are coming up with what's so obvious. And when you're getting punked as Trumpers by mainstream media, when mainstream media is calling out your Trumper bullshit, that means you're really fucking not getting it done. If you're a Trumper and you're being, the mainstream media that's so superficial and so deceptive is able to penetrate through the easy to penetrate through deception because it's so obvious what Trump is. And Trump is performing now, right? Like Trump is just loving the center being the center of attention. Like he was pissed that Israel was getting all the credit and it wasn't about him. So he started to say we and yeah, we're kicking their ass and yeah, it's American technology and yeah, it wasn't for us, this stuff. And he's supposed to not be doing that, right? And now he has 2 weeks where everyone's, and he does like a big reveal. It's a reality TV shit. He's trying to do a big reveal here. Like he's teasing this big reveal of the big day decides in the bunker buster bomb. And this is, this could create some kind of nuclear catastrophe of a country of 92 million people. I want to get to the Tucker Carlson interview. And I might do that on my other channel. I don't know. It's like so much stuff to cover here. We might have a little bit of respite over the weekend where this isn't going to be discussed. I don't think he's going to decide over the weekend because he won't get as much run. The stuff that happens over the weekend gets, the main news people aren't there. They have to come in off their day off to cover something big, like a big thing that happens. But big news doesn't happen on the weekend because they want people to spend money. And so they always plan the news cycle. It's great to have something pop on Monday. But anyways, we'll see how that plays out. But Trump's trying to do a big fucking reveal here. Like he's just a fucking it's so inappropriate.
Now, in the meantime, Iran claims that it's shooting down Israeli drones over Tehran. And moments ago, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to strike all of Iran's nuclear facilities. Let's go to CNN's Clarissa Ward, who is live for us in Israel.
Okay, so there's that. I want to shift gears for two funny things here. That one of them has to do with this and one of them doesn't. And let's do that. And then I'll show you something that I copied off the TV yesterday. And then, and get back to this. So this was a video entitled Flinching from the Consequences of Responsibility. Trump says he needs 2 weeks. And the title is from something somebody says. And so you have these people who have teams of people. They have basically writers that come up with something like this so that'll pop. A bumper sticker. He's flinching from the consequences of responsibility. That's a well-worded, it's clickbait also. But, Trump is milking this thing. Like, it can't be both, right? On this very same network, they're showing that Trump is, and I got something from Jen Psaki. We'll see what she has to say, because she sucks. But there's this great moment when this woman, I'll show you it here.
That is where we start today with New York Times Pentagon correspondent and MSNBC contributor Helene Cooper. And joining me, David Frum, staff writer for The Atlantic and host of the video podcast, The David Frum Show, and former U.S. Senator, MSNBC political analyst Claire McCaskill. All right, Helene, let's start with you. What does your reporting tell you about what Donald Trump is considering?
So she was from the New York Times, right? This is her level of reporting. This is fucking, it's atrocious.
Well, he's looking high, and thanks for having me. President Trump is, as we've all been reporting, looking at the possibility of dropping a bunker buster, which is sort of the name we use for one of those big, really big bombs that only the United States has.
Holy shit. Everybody knows this. Okay, to start off with, this has to do with Iran and Israel, and they're two countries. Iran has Muslim people, and Israel has Jewish people, and Israel and Iran do not get along very well. And they have, the conflict is about whether Iran might have nuclear weapons, which Israel doesn't want them to have, and they don't like that they might have one or can create one. And so there's a problem with that. But Israel is waiting for Donald Trump to do something about it, and they're hoping that he'll drop one of these bunker busting bombs, and it's that kind of bomb is really really big bomb. It's a big bomb it's a big bomb that he has, and he has to decide whether he wants to drop it. So that's what's going on here from the New York Times. That's I'm glad it can be so informative.
On the Fordo nuclear plant that is buried at more than 250 feet in a mountain in Iran. That is one of the things that Israel can't do itself.
It can't do itself because they don't have this bomb, this really big bomb, because this thing is down deep. Like it's almost like a bunker, and they need something to bust it, and that's why they have the nickname bunker busting bomb, because it goes really deep into the ground, and it can bust a bunker. And Israel doesn't have one. So Donald Trump was like, well, you know what? Do I want to lend this one out? Last time I let my neighbor have my rake, he never brought it back, and so he's got to figure out whether like he was willing to lend this thing and give it to Israel because I mean it is a bunker busting bomb, and it's a really big bomb.
I'd like to say, we're in untrodden territory, but we're not. We kind of have been in this place before, and we were here in 2003 when we went into the Iraq War. There seems to be a lot of officials in the Trump administration who appear to think that this is a one drop, one and done type deal. We go in and you drop this bomb.
You drop this bomb, and then you walk away. Like it's going to either bust the bunker or it doesn't bust the bunker, and then you go back about your business. But Iraq War was like they didn't do the bunker buster bombs, but there was a long war. You guys might remember that we were there for a long time. Afghanistan, Iraq. These are countries and other countries that are Muslim countries in the Middle East.
You drop this bomb, and that's it. The Iranian regime the nuclear regime is done for. President Trump appeared to allude to that in his stream of tweets this week as well. The Pentagon
as well too, such as, and so this is what's going on. This is how it's going with the bunker buster bomb. This is like show and fucking tell, right? Like the way this works when I cover these things. And let's say I miss out on something and I'm 4 days into it. I have to go back 3 days to get the lay of the land, right? Let's say I didn't know any of this stuff. They're not talking about this stuff anymore. Like, it's just the pundits come on, the pundits who come on, the idea is that everybody knows what a bunker buster bomb is from like years ago, not just now. But people watching the news, they explain what a bunker buster bomb is, and I gave you detail where a guy knew exactly, showed the framework of the bomb, like how it works, these things, right? More detailed analysis. So, they brought people in for that, but everyone understood what a bunker buster bomb did from past issues we've had in the Middle East with Saddam Hussein and some of these other, and then it was also talked about with Gaza because they have these tunnels. And they wanted America to drop bunker buster bomb in these tunnels. And Israel was doing similar things, but they don't have, those capabilities. But 4 days into this story, where we know Israel's waiting, this is the whole thing right now. Like this is this is the part of the story that's about the bunker buster bomb. Israel attacking Iran when it was Trump's birthday and he had that bullshit military parade that fucking was a dud. And shitting all over the parade and going against him. And every other president before, they didn't even think about doing this. And they just went off and did it. While Trump was in the middle of negotiation with Iran. Like no one said the negotiations had broke down when Israel dropped the bomb. I mean, dropped the missiles and things on, when they did these, the first wave of attacks. There was nobody that said that Iran and now they're saying that the negotiations broke down, but only after Israel, did all this shit, right? And Trump said they should have come to the table. Well, you were talking to them, and maybe and you were saying there's progress, and then all of a sudden Israel says, "Fuck that, we're not doing one of these other deals. We're going to pressure America to choose a side here, and we're just going to go for it." And then the story went along, and then Iran retaliated, and they weren't doing as well as Israel. They weren't doing as Israel was winning, and then Trump came in and said, "Yeah, we're kicking their ass." And then they're like, "Well, to really kick their ass, we have to drop this bomb." And then this is where we're at in the story. And the stuff about the bomb and what it does and why Israel wants them to do it, that's 3 days ago. That's 2 days ago. And this woman's coming in talking like she's talking to a kindergarten.
Is more cautious because they believe that the Pentagon officials believe that Iran can retaliate. With all of this bombing campaign that Israel has embarked upon, they have left Iran's naval assets so far alone. Iran retains the ability to mine the Strait of Hormuz. Iran still has enough ballistic missiles at this point to attack American bases in the Mideast and attack American troops at those bases. So the Pentagon is preparing for the possibility.
So there's a possibility that we do something, then they will attack us, and then we'll be in a war because then we can't let that fucking rest. Then we have to go to Iran, and we have to go in there, and we have to fucking bring our troops and mobilize them, which Israel wants, and so it's just unbelievably remedial, right? Like, this is wonderful, like showing you how bad the mainstream media is. Let me go to the Don Lemon's thing, and then I got something else. I want to get back to the Trump stuff. Don Lemon shorts, and every time they show me a short, I know it's going to be really bad, and so really good for me, right? And so this one right here, it's a throwback.
This is a movement. White women have answered the call to support Kamala Harris.
So many people.
This is
welcome back, guys. We're just gonna ride the waves of this.
Largest Zoom
we're just
call
gonna
in
let go
history.
and let the Zoom go.
And it's all white women. It's a white women Zoom call. Fucking white women zooming the shit out of the internet here.
It crashed.
The internet crashed. So many white women were talking. So many white women talking at the same time made the internet crash. We now know the power of the white women's ability to gab and talk.
Let go and let the Zoom go.
It crashed. 130,000 strong. This is a movement. They're supporting Kamala Harris.
Everybody left.
Sounds like a bunch of white women talking. And, the power of white women talking and everyone else running for cover with white feminist women talking on the internet, and the power of that to make people scatter like rats on a sinking ship made, this is the power of the white women talking on the internet. It's just a destructive power. And, when Kamala Harris lost, there was various people of color blaming white women for not coming out because it was liberal white women that make up, feminist white women that make up a small percentage, and they didn't turn out. Even those people didn't turn out. And so later on he's going to change suit and blame white women for not getting behind Kamala Harris. And we know what happened with Kamala anyway. She took people's money and gave it to experts who then must have given her back kickbacks, so that she would, she overpaid all these professional, long-term political advisors and, blew all this donation money of $2 billion and walked away with a fortune. And now, who knows how much illegal campaign money she has and, the whole thing and the debacle that was her campaign.
I think we.
Boom. Look at how smug he is. She got crushed, bro. And Donald Trump is now fucking up the whole world. You were wrong on this, like you're smug and wrong and just shitty. And so this is great. So I think I do a cold water bath, and I do some running on like a stair thing or walking or whatever, combination of both. And I usually turn on some sports thing, but maybe I turn this on, I'm not sure. But I turned on to the exact moment. I've said this myself. And when these mainstream people start saying things that I'm saying, we're fucked, right? Like that's one of the indications that we're fucked. That what I've been saying for years, and things that are very specific to truther stuff, and my specific truther things, we're fucked. Like that's, they're acknowledging things that are, they never acknowledge, which means that we're really far down the whole thing, right?
What are the issues for America? Why is it a foundational issue for Trump that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon? Why is this something that the U.S. should be involved in? Why are we allied with Israel?
He says because they chant death to America.
They chant death to America.
And this is Richard Stingel, and he's a Jew from New York. And he's saying things which, are anti-Israeli policy. The basic Israeli policy, or their, one of their tenets, Israel, is Iran can't have a nuclear war. And so this guy asks, why are we aligned with Israel, and why are we hell-bent on Iran not having a nuclear weapon? And so Trump saying, well, they say death to America, which is, he's going to tell a story about this, right, in a second, which is kind of an interesting story about him going to Iran. But for a guy who is Jewish and from New York to take this position, it goes against one of the basic principles of Israel, that Iran can't get a nuclear weapon because they'll use it. As soon as Iran gets an atomic bomb, they're going to drop it on Israel. Like, that's the idea. But Iran, who might have set up these proxy fighters and launch missiles into Israel, has some element of self-preservation, right? There's some element of self-preservation, because even these, diabolical fucking, those mullahs and these religious, these bloodthirsty religious pieces of shit that run that country right now, and they are pieces of shit, because I know Iranian people, and I know what they suffer in terms of they don't have like freedoms like anything like we have in America, but they're very Western. They're very Western people. I mean, they're, these, there was about 20 or so Iranian people that were doing the meditation that I would see in the ashram years ago. That's before the whole Heartfulness debacle. But, up until 2014, I would see them. Some of them were living there. Their kids were going to the school there, and they, they dressed similarly to the Indian people, but they were much more Western. They used to have an open culture before we wrecked it by taking down Mossadegh. And all of them know America fucked them. Like, America fucked Iran, which was a very progressive, and the Persian language is beautiful. There's this one guy, he does like wellness, positive thinking seminars. And he's just the best guy. Like, I really like talking to him. He's one of the sort of saints of Saj Marg. And like when my family and I was going through a crisis, he was on a business visa and he was conducting his business out of India. And he just, my family and I had a visa crisis. And it was really stressful. And, my family was falling apart. Divorce was going to happen, all these things. And I talked to the guy, and he just changed everything I was saying and worded it positively and in a grateful, this is the part of the gratitude thing, that's part of Saj Marg, but it's hard to practice. And he just had a great way and a manner of speaking about it, right? Like, he could just change a problem into like, this is what he did it professionally. And, there's a number of people. He had a wife and some kids, my daughter, Anna, babysat for them. And, there was these people, and they were all like, they were neat looking, and they were like thoughtful, and, they weren't like, remedial religious people like their rulership. that they now have because America fucked that country over, right? On it had to do with the British Petroleum, but also Israel. And the Iranian people and the leadership have some self-preservation, knowing that if they used a nuclear bomb, their country wouldn't exist. Like, they can't do that. Like, it would be dropped on them. And they're not fucking suicidal, right? The people who are in power are never suicidal. These are religious pieces of shit that are also, they're not truly godly people. They're materialistic, and they're not suicidal. And so even if Iran got a nuclear bomb, they're not going to use it. But then they would have the threat, and they'd have more power, and there would be, Israel couldn't walk all over them, right? That's what this is about.
What are the issues for America? Why is it a foundational issue for Trump that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon? Why is this something that the U.S. should be involved in? Why are we allied with Israel?
He says because they chant death to America.
They chant death to America. I went to Iran in 2014. I was sitting at a rally. These young guys were chanting death to America. I had a minder. I said, what are they saying? They're saying death to America. They finished the chant, and two young men came over and said, are you American? I said, yes. We want to welcome you to our country. We love American culture and love American movies. They wanted to talk about all these things. Iran is the most Western nation in the whole Middle East. We have much more in common with them than a lot of countries that we do have alliances with.
Well, the huge X factor, too, is what Ben Rhodes, Obama's security guy, described as what we could have is a catastrophic success. Okay, you take out the nuclear arsenal, and then what?
Yeah.
What is regime change? I mean, Richard, you could describe what that would mean, but
Yeah, there's not someone waiting in the wings in Iran.
Yeah.
And although there's not a lot of...
And it's not Thomas Jefferson.
Well, there's very little support for the regime, 10 to 15% according to Kareem Sajidpour, who's got a good handle on things.
Here's the problem. Because what they're saying, this weird guy in the cowboy hat, he's an ex-John McCain guy, but, anti-Trump. But the thing is, the Iranian government is not reflective of what the progressive aspect of the Iranian people. You go back to Iran under Mossadegh and then under the Shah of Iran, and people were dressing in like bell-bottoms and Western clothes. And, the people themselves were not very religious, the Persian people, and had, were very moderate and very Western, like this guy was saying. You can see the pictures, like I showed the picture that one guy showed of the picture under the Shah, but he left out that piece of shit guy who's a Trumper. But they leave out the fact that America fucked the country over and created this religious oppressive government that nobody over there likes. They want to get rid of it. No one likes living like that, right? They don't fucking live like that. But there are places in the Middle East where people are very into their head coverings and their traditional, religious bullshit, right? In a lot of these countries that, like Saudi Arabia, some of these countries. And, there's a lot of fucking bloodthirsty fucking, punishments and for small offenses. And, you can't speak about the religion in such a way. And they, and that wasn't Iran. And now Iran has this very repressive government and people who were before that very westernized, educated. I mean, all these artifacts were lost. All this wonderful culture was lost when these fucking guys took over. Like ancient shit. Like they have this ancient culture, right? I said that there's the Master Charji talked about how in the Persian language, there's like 50 words for love, right? The sophisticated culture there. But you have to acknowledge that America fucked that country over. And doing regime change never fucking works, right? So what they're saying is maybe you take out the regime, and I don't know about busting the bunker busting bombs isn't going to take out the regime. It's going to stop their nuclear program, maybe. And what if it doesn't work, right? And so regime change should happen there, but it has to happen organically. And you see what happened before when you fucking did regime change. Like you're suffering the results of regime change in every one of those countries. Iraq's a fucking mess. Libya's a mess. And it's worse off now than before when they had these shitty leaders or people that America didn't like. people have to govern themselves, and you can't do things by force. If you're a godly person, the Sajmark system is the forceless force, which is the transmission. God is without force. God compels you to change by loving. God, of course, there's consequences for your wrong decisions that are built into the system, and they seem forceful, like war and famine and tumultuous weather events. But people die, things end, things are just destruction is a part of God. There's creation, there's preservation, and there's destruction. Right? Those are the three elements. And if there's creation, there has to be destruction, because things can't live forever. Things can't exist in a changeless state. There's preservation, there's maintenance, but there has to be, if there's a beginning, there has to be an end. If something's created, it has to be destroyed, right? And so God doesn't destroy as a sense of using force. It's just, your own bullshit coming back to you. And so if you put force out into the world and you try to impose your will, then something comes back at you, that same force comes back at you. It's inevitable. And so we're using a lot of force, and it's all going to come back to us, because it can't be any other way, right? And we forced ourselves in Iran, and we fucked up that country, and this sovereign country, and these people have been paying for it for years, and that's going to come back to America. It has to. There's no way around it. Like, you can't avoid the cyclical aspect of things and your consequences for your actions. And so, none of these things matter, because America is going to suffer because of this. And the more force we use, the more that it comes back at us. And you think you can get away with it, it's silly and it's immature and it's one-sided, and people just do these things. I was watching this Netflix show about this guy who built a submarine to go down to the Titanic at a carbon fiber. And it was doomed because the carbon fiber would collapse under the pressure. And he eventually killed himself and 3 billionaires going down the Titanic in a boat that was a submarine that was, not inspected by third parties, and he, violated all these rules, and all these people quit on him, and he was vindictive, very much like Trump, a narcissistic prick from, Connecticut, like just one of these Eastern assholes, very much like Trump, and went to these sort of elite schools, and he thought he knew more than, and he just forced something that shouldn't have been. And all the warning signs were there. If you watch the documentary, it's kind of interesting. He was told by multiple experts that this is a disaster, that people were freaked out, they all knew what was going to happen, and he made it happen. And he died with a bunch of other people because of his arrogance and his unwilling to see, that he was doing something that was a failure, unwillingness to admit that he had failed, right? And covering up his failure and, risking other people's lives in a way that was completely fucked. And Trump is that guy, right? And there's a lot of that guys out there now. And, that's where there's a self-destructive element to our country and the world. And we're rushing towards it.
Largest newspapers, and I don't say this lightly. I have a huge amount of respect for the media, but a number of the nation's largest newspapers made an age-old mistake today.
Jen Psaki sucks. Psaki calls out the media that fell for Trump's 2-week trick. Now, this is probably going to suck, but it might not, because, it's easy to see through Trump's thing. Trump is right now, he's loving the fact that he's the decider. He's got to make this decision, right? And that's all that matters to him, that he's at the center of attention. He's at the center of this thing. It's no longer Israel is at the center, and he's got to make a decision. Now, the big reveal is dropping the bomb. Like anything else for a guy who had a military parade, he has no choice but to drop the bomb. But, it could be an epic failure, and Trump hates that shit. And it's not an epic failure that he can, if we get bogged down in a war then, if Iran then retaliates, it's one thing to just strike the country. and devastate the infrastructure, which fucks people. People starve. You're screwing ordinary people over. He doesn't give a shit about that. Like, he talks like he does. But it's another thing to do regime change and, all these other things. And then what happens then? Because then you have another one of these messes. And the issue is Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I don't know what Joe Rogan's saying. And then other MAGA people of influence are like, don't fucking do this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe, also. I'm not sure. Someone mentioned her in one of these reports. I didn't see what she said. But there's all these people that are like, fucking, we don't need another war. And Trump was against these things when he was a candidate, right, on his platform. And so now you got this situation where he's going to do something that half of the people who are MAGA people want no part of. And he'd get this big moment where he drops this bomb, this fucking mega bomb, right? A MAGA mega bomb. And it's never been dropped before. And he could do this big reveal, and it'd be wonderful for that moment, but then it would have probably disastrous consequences. And so this is where Trump is at right now. And he's caught between a rock and the hard place where he doesn't want to go small and not drop the bomb. Like, not dropping the bomb would be going small, right? And then there's whatever Israel does or doesn't do with that. And so, that relationship and whatever, him saying no to them. And then what does Israel do with Iran? And then they're going to find a way to suck Trump into this thing. Are they going to do a false flag type attack? I mean, it's just what he's waiting for, some provocation, So, I mean, look at it. It's just weird fucking, look at her. There's like fucking witch-like eyes there.
They took the words of the Trump administration at face value and spit them right back out to the American public without context, without much of anything. Here were some of the headlines this afternoon. Here's one from the Wall Street Journal. Trump's Iran decision to come within 2 weeks. From the Washington Post, Trump says he'll decide on Iran strike within 2 weeks. And from the Associated Press, Trump says he'll decide whether U.S. will directly attack Iran within 2 weeks. Now, those headlines all stem from what...
You mean clickbait headlines? Like, that's the headline. You have to do that. Like, fucking, that's what mainstream media does. Giving context isn't in the headline. Like, that's silly. Did you read any of what they said? Because they're going to say the same bullshit you're going to say. Or they'll follow it up with some, that's the first day headline. And then the pundits come in, and then your people like you come in. Like, this is how the news fucking works. Like, you don't know how the news works, Psaki? Come on, Psaki. Psaki.
Caroline Leavitt read today at today's White House press briefing.
Now, regarding...
Like, does she age like fucking 10 years already? Like, it's like, is she like really 90 years? This is really like Joan Rivers, who's somehow sucking the life off of some blonde girl from Utah or something.
The ongoing situation in Iran. I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote,
We saw this.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, Psaki, we're a minute and 30 seconds into this thing for your dumbass take. Just fucking spit it out already.
That's a quote directly from the president. All of that in isolation, if it was from another White House, it makes it sound like the current president wants to give himself and his advisors time to really consider. I mean, one of the most serious foreign policy decisions a president can make. He wants to be clear, maybe, to the public that...
Spit it out, Psaki.
They can expect a decision from him in 2 weeks. That would be under a normal presidency. And sure...
Okay, Psaki, this is your big reveal.
I guess there's a percentage chance that's what's going on this time. But the very important context that is completely missing, no surprise, from Caroline's announcement or statement or reading
Here it comes.
of the statement and all those headlines is this. I'll get to it in 2 weeks is one of Donald Trump's absolute favorite tactics. He literally uses it all the time.
No way, does he? He kicks the can down the road. I never heard any other politician, any other person does that to get the fucking media off his back, Psaki. Look at Psaki. It's one of his favorite tactics to say, hey, we'll come back to this in 2 weeks.
And most of the time, in fact, almost every time, when 2 weeks rolls around, Trump has either completely forgotten about whatever it was he promised in the first place, or, and I think this is more likely than the first one, he's hoping people have just moved on. That the news cycle is on to something else. Maybe something else he fabricated. Maybe just something else in general. I mean, he's already done this
That's actually true.
at least 10 times in the 6 months since he took office. 10 times.
Because it works. He knows that within 2 weeks there'll be another fucking big thing happening. Israel isn't going to let him go. And so this is like, he's stupid to think this is, there's going to be some kind of false flag, assassination attempt on him, American lives lost somewhere, some kind of thing that's going to be blamed on Iran, and then he's going to be fucked, and he's going to be dragged into this thing. And, either that, he's waiting for that, or he's hoping that won't happen, and he can just, not have to deal with this thing, right? But it's not going to be negotiation, because I think if Iran even negotiated a wonderful deal, like for America, and they came with their belly exposed, Israel would fuck that up. Israel's not going to let a deal happen. And so, at some point he's going to realize that he's owned by Israel, that he's Netanyahu's bitch, right? And so, but a big part of this is the reveal. Like, he likes the attention. Like, he's going to be talking about this, although he was, moving on to the Fed. But he's going to be talking about this because he loves the attention. Like, he loves to keep people in suspension. Remember when he said, a storm is coming? Like, he talks in cryptic terms, right? The storm never came. He never said what the storm was. But the fucking Cubies, they're walking around with the storm is coming T-shirts, right? And still doing it today. When's the storm coming? And so he knows that this is divisive in the MAGA community. He knows that he's owned by Israel and the powers behind Israel, Wall Street and the banksters, and he's got all these issues, and the thing could go south on him, and so he's kind of boxed in, and I feel like he's going to have to drop this fucking thing, but he's definitely doesn't like to make decisions like this. He's limp dick. He's nutless. Because he's doing it as a performance. He's doing it for, when people do things for attention, they don't want the hard work that goes with it, right? They want to christen that Titanic, but they don't want to be on the ship when it goes down, right? So they want to be there for the big moment. Hey, look, this is a wonderful ship. Let me break a bottle of champagne on it, but I'm not getting aboard that motherfucker, right? And so, he doesn't want the effects of it. He likes the big reveal. He likes the celebration. He wants the military style parade, but he doesn't want the hassles it is to be in a war. And he inherited a war in Afghanistan, and he didn't get out, right? As much as he rags on Joe Biden for not getting out of Afghanistan, he didn't get out. Like, for 4 years, nothing happened there but bad shit, and things were getting worse, and he just ignored it because, like, he didn't want to be the guy that fucking withdrew from Afghanistan. Like the whole Afghanistan thing with Biden. You don't want to be that guy. And so, there's a lot going on for Trump.
We're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks, within 2 weeks. I could answer that question better in 2 weeks. I'll do this at some point over the next 2 weeks. I'll announce it over the next 2 weeks. I'll tell you about that in a month from now or 2 weeks from now. You trust President Putin? In about 2 weeks. You can ask that question in 2 weeks, and we'll see.
See, what he's figured out is that the news cycle doesn't, I've said this before, I won't be covering this story in a week. It doesn't even take 2 weeks. And so there'll be 2 news stories. There'll be something else, breaking news, you know. And so all you have to do is wait it out. It's what Jimmy Kimmel figured out when he got Me Too'd. He went away for 3 months, and by the time he got back, everybody who cared about his wearing blackface and other shit that he did had disappeared because other shit comes in there. You just have to, you just have to avoid it, and then other stories come in and distract from people.
It'll be out in about less than 2 weeks. We're going to start selling, hopefully, in about 2 weeks.
Look at Psaki doing a good thing. Look at Psaki. She actually had something. I was thinking it was going to suck, and it did, but it was something. That was good. That was Psaki. Good job, Psaki.
2 weeks, about 2 weeks. Maybe it's a tick. Maybe he read a marketing report that says people move on in the media. Who knows?
Well, because you guys do. Because nobody, like, this is why everyone can get away with everything now. Because, you just have to not say I did it. Like, you just don't own it. You just wait for the media to move on. And it might come back around again, but this ain't moving on because Israel's not going to fucking allow this to move on. They're not going to. They're going to go and they'll do it themselves, and Israel's at war with Iran, and America is going to get dragged in because it has to. And so, whatever's going on with Trump's teeny little brain, and the other thing is, Trump wants ownership of this thing, like because he thought Israel was getting all the credit for this, ass kicking over. I mean, the whole thing is wonderful. That aspect of it. It's going to lead to World War III at some one way or another. All this stuff is heading there, So, but right now this stuff is it's great content and entertainment. So just to wrap this up here, the thing about a shitty politician and a grifter that they have in common is they don't really want to make decisions. They don't want anything to become real, right? So they both promise things that they can't deliver. And they don't like to vote on things like senators and, people don't like legislation that can be used against them in future elections. Trump talked about these do nothing. I forget the word he used when he was on the Joe Rogan interview before the election in 2024 election. And he categorized, these people who are like survivors and people who are like, they sat around and did nothing. Like he understood politicians to be that way, which is an accurate description. And they don't want to get their hands dirty because they're just, making money based in their position, lobbyist money, whatever they're getting paid as a salary. And they're getting all the perks, and they don't want anything that could threaten that. And so they're not trying to do anything or make America better. And Trump started to buy into his own grift, and he started to actually think he could do things. But one of the rules of grifting is you sell something, and it's nothing. You're selling fucking nothing. It's not a real thing. Like a grift is you're selling an illusion. You're selling shit that doesn't exist. You're selling snake oil that doesn't cure anything, right? Like it's the sales pitch that matters. But when they get the snake oil, it doesn't cure them, right? When you're, one of these fake religious faith healers, we have shills in the audience who are, crippled and all of a sudden can walk. Well, they really can't walk. They're actors, right? And so when you have real health issues, it's going to get exposed, right? It's it can't last. So when you're a grifter, you want to get out of the grift and you want to disappear before people realize that you're selling them nothing, right? You're selling them, you're selling them something. It just doesn't work, right? And Trump hasn't figured that out. I mean, he had figured it out as a businessman, but now as a politician, he's bought into his own bullshit. But, he knows when things get real, his bullshit is just bullshit. And he's got to make real decisions. He's got to do something about this thing with Israel. And no matter what he does, it's bad for America. Like the best thing to do for America would be to cut Israel off, right? Even somebody sent me this thing. It's a Matt Gaetz video that slimeball Matt Gaetz, and he's talking about how that Iran wants to negotiate, and they've had inspectors in there. The only nuclear power that doesn't have inspectors is Israel in the Middle East. They keep their nuclear program very secretive, but they want Iran to be transparent, right? And what would be best for America is if Israel just was no longer our ally, because they don't really do anything for America. Like, we have troops there in that region, with to protect our oil interests. But other than that, there's not really much of anything, right? It's like a military base. But really, it's a place where we're just going to be sucked into their bullshit. And so with the genocide they're doing to the Palestinian people and all the rest of these things, and clearly they want, this is a so-called friend wanting you lure you into something that is going to have negative effects. There's no advantage for us politically or any other, economically or even militarily to get into a war with Iran. And so, and it could lead to World War III, and it probably will. And Israel doesn't give a shit about that. In fact, they don't care about America. They just want to use us like they use America. But Trump can't do that because they're his number one people. Like, they would cut his throat, and he would, in terms of politically and all the rest of it. They're his power group. You have to have a power group. And, and he doesn't believe in it anyway. He's on the record as being Israel's greatest friend and all these things. And so he's in this horrible position. And it's when the grift gets real. And, he makes this decision, he's going to own this decision. There's going to be no blaming Joe Biden. It wasn't Biden's fault that this happened. He can blame, the Obama deal with Iran. But that deal, if that was honored, he wouldn't be in this fucking mess. He didn't have to get rid of that deal. And now he's got to fucking come up with his own deal. And there was a deal that exists. He didn't get rid of Obamacare. Why didn't he get rid of Obamacare? He didn't even campaign against it. Because there isn't a better solution. Obamacare is, is set to be really shitty. It was backloaded. It was like these kind of NFL contracts, non-guaranteed money, where the player gets this $45 million with a team option, or $20 million at a team option, and the team ain't gonna pay that shit, right? So, they have 2 years of guaranteed money, and then the third year there's a balloon payment that their team is never gonna pay, and so they cut the player, right? And so, it's backloaded in that way. And Obamacare and, in a different way, Medicaid and Social Security are all backloaded, where there's going to be it's unsustainable. And he's stuck with all this shit. They're just kicking the can. They're kicking this down kicking the can down the road. And every president's done it. He did it to Biden. He kicked the can out of Afghanistan. Why didn't he get the troops out of Afghanistan? Because there are disasters waiting to happen. It's a clusterfuck waiting to happen. And so, a grifter and a politician, two different things, but the same, doesn't want to do those things, right? No one wants to fucking be accountable for any of these things. No one wants to be Pontius Pilate, right? And they want to wash their hands of the thing, but they don't want to do the deed. And so, Trump is in a shitty position here. But he also wants attention, and he wants credit, and he wants to be on the winning side. There's all of those things. All right, I was going to cover the bombing of the hospital today, and I'll do that tomorrow. And I have other things I'm going to cover on the Apocalypse Now channel. And so that's enough for today. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.